Let's begin. Let's begin. First of all, thank you everybody who've joined us for this stream slash episode of Asians Read. I don't have an Asian drink. I just have water. But it's good to mix things up. It's good to be pleasantly surprised. So yeah. Now, one of the things that was a huge surprise to me, but I don't think should have been a surprise, is our Discord. I want to thank everyone who has become a member of the Asians Represent Discord. It has been so fantastic to see the community, and not just Asian people, but just the community in general, talking on that Discord, talking about amazing projects that they're working on, trying to collaborate. It's been amazing because I think there are a whole bunch of people who are going to help me learn how to play League of Legends. With
Well, if you want to play some Dota, let me know.
I don't want to play Dota, Steve. I thought about it, and I was like, I don't want to play Dota, even though I
From
would get to play with you.
Give up on League of Legends. It's not worth it.
Look, I had a very positive experience. I played it yesterday with my friend Drew, who had met through the podcast, and Drew actually taught me how to ADC in League of Legends, and you know what? I had a good time. I had a very positive experience. And then we played GTFO for 2 hours, and that was so stressful, so incredibly stressful. But I'm just so happy that you folks are on our Discord. We will be posting the link to that Discord. If you are watching this and you are not a member of our Discord and you would like to, we'll post a link in the chat. It will be in the YouTube channel. It will be on our Twitch channel. Please come join us. It's a good space. It's a good community, and at a time like this, it's a really good time to be able to connect with other like-minded folks. So we're back. It's Asians Read time. I thought we were halfway through the book, and I was wrong. I was wrong. All day today, I was like, yes, we're halfway through the book, because I actually found an archaeologist who is into TTRPGs, who is also Asian, which is actually very difficult, who has agreed to come on for when we actually do the world building part. And I was like, yep, once we get through proficiencies in magic, in my head thinking that would be all done this session. Well, I'll let you know. And I looked, and I'm like, oh no, we're definitely not close. Whoa, Steve, I'm seeing in the chat that you're blaming me for these broken links.
I'm moderating here. Don't worry about it. Just ignore that. It'll all filter through me. Yeah. It's good. I got this.
But no, we are nowhere near getting to the actual world building, which gives me a lot of time to actually assemble like a really good panel of people for that. So what is this stream? What is Asians Read? Steve, do you want to answer that? Because you do a really good job of that, and I want to make sure that every time I work with you, I praise you. I like to do that for every Asians Represent. It's like I like to praise Agatha, I like to praise Jade, I like to praise Amar, and Steve. Every Friday, I get to chat with you, and we get to go through this.
Thank you so much.
I was gonna say this book. I'm gonna say this document,
this piece of media that happened to exist.
This time capsule of casual 80s racism.
Yeah. Speaking of casual 80s racism, what we're reading today and what we've been reading is Oriental Adventures, the AD&D version. It was released in the 80s by Gygax and team. If you're new to the stream, welcome. Here we do a reading of the text itself. Sometimes we'll skip over parts. We don't really want to get bogged down in mechanics. What we are trying to do is we're trying to take a look at what was written and the effect or impact that it has. In particular, what we like to focus on, and we can focus on a lot of different things, but 3 things we like to focus on to kind of help guide our reading is we look for examples where the writers have really painted Asians as violent people or violent savages, uncivilized people who want to be saved, as well as people or objects of fetishization. So those are kind of the themes that we're looking out for. There are a lot more as we go through it, but in general, we find that those particular themes really help kind of guide us as we pick apart the parts that cause harm and are worthwhile talking about.
Yeah, and last week we went through weapons and equipment. That section was, I thought we'd skip over more, but when you include things like chopsticks as weapons, it's just very difficult. Now we have assembled a two amazing guests, and it's really funny. I've been thinking about how I was going to introduce the two of you, and I have their social handles on the screen already. But I will say this. One I met at one of the best cons I've ever been to, and one I met at one of the worst cons I've ever been to. And we're already laughing because you know which con we're talking about.
Yep.
So
it was the worst con, but I made the best friends.
yes, so
Whoa.
so I went to a con in Kitchener called SkyCon. It is a dead con now. It no longer exists.
First and last time.
First and last time, it was like, and both were actually hotel cons, but it was called SkyCon. Agatha and I drove down there to do our first ever con collab, and it was going to be with the Broadswords, and we were going to do a live show at this con. We had no idea about this con. I didn't know what to expect. We showed up, and the con forgot to advertise that the show was happening. And
Nobody showed up for the panel.
nobody showed up for their panel. Nobody showed up for the show. And we did a live show in front of two people. Miriam
Me?
and our friend Katie, who is awesome. And it was one of the best live games of D&D I've ever been in.
It was not recorded.
And it wasn't
unfortunately.
recorded. But, that was an amazing experience at a terrible con. Now let's talk about an amazing experience at an amazing con Miriam was also at, but I met Bashir at this con. Now, this is Big Bad Con. I'm talking about Big Bad Con. Come on. Big Bad Con is one of the best cons out there. And shout out to the Big Bad Con team for preemptively canceling Big Bad Con 2020. They decided that this wasn't a time to ask people for money through a Kickstarter, and this wasn't a time where they could responsibly plan a con. And so, I got mad respect to Big Bad Con. It is such a good space. It was the first con where I was like, oh my god, this is mostly POC. This is what's going on? I could just hang out. I didn't sign up for anything, and I still felt like I did a lot at that con. And I got an amazing interview, whole bunch of podcasts out of that con, and made some really good connections. So, Miriam, let's start with you. You were the one that I got to meet at the worst con ever. Do you want to introduce yourself? And then we'll get to Bashir, who I met at one of the best cons ever.
Hi, everybody. You can find me at the best and the worst of cons. So I'm Miriam, they, them pronouns. You can find me on Twitter at media_junkie. And yay. I do a lot of games, especially in Sarzamine, which is my homebrew setting, which hopefully soon I can make an announcement about its own game system. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And I also am part of the Musafirs podcast, which is on a hiatus, but we're going to be starting up very, very soon. I'm excited. There's a lot of behind the scene things going on that I can't talk about yet, but soon.
Nice. What?
It's like we got some Moosefears fans in the chat, but those who don't know, what is the Moosefear podcast?
Oh yeah, the Musafirs podcast is an actual play podcast that is currently in 5e, but we're going to be moving away from that to our own system. And it is a decolonized South Asian fantasy campaign setting.
It warms my heart every time I hear that. I'm just like, yeah, more of that, please.
And you've played in that, Steve.
I know, and I cannot wait. I know you and I have talked about plans for something later on, but we can calm down for now, I guess.
Yeah.
Stay hyped on the inside.
That's awesome. So. And Bashir.
Hi.
Introduce yourself to the people who don't know you.
I'm Bashir Gauss. I'm an RPG freelancer and indie RPG writer. I've got a bunch of stuff at havocfet.itch.io, most notably It Was Never Yours, a game actively in development, waiting on art and some other stuff to come in, that is about robbing the British Museum to repatriate cultural artifacts back to their countries of origin. I also develop a bunch of smaller indie games. This is my final recording about being scientists for some horrible horror movie project, leaving behind audio recordings as you get murdered by the creatures you have unleashed. In development for the Asian Martial Arts Jam, I'm working on Ahadi, a game about being Mughal noble cavalry in the Mughal Empire, which is wildly expanding in scope. It is probably going to be split into 2 games at this point. I've also done freelance work with Paizo, Kobold Press, Spire, games, and some other companies, and I'm available for freelance work pretty much all the time. And yeah, that's me. I'm also a fan of both the Asians Represent podcast and the Musafirs, so this is pretty great on my end.
Yeah, like honestly, Bashir, we had when I interviewed you for the main Asians Represent podcast, and we were talking, and you blew my mind on, I was like, well, what's some great Asian representation, specifically about Southwest Asia, and the Islamic world, and you were like, oh yeah, it's in a war game called Infinity, and I was like, what? The last possible place that I thought you would find good representation in a war game, a style of gaming very rooted in sort of British colonialism. But we have 2 amazing guests who I would love to bring back for future books that we go through, because it's not just Oriental Adventures. There are so many people that Steve and I want to have on this stream, and we just want to keep making it happen. So let's get into it. We are looking at proficiencies. Like I said earlier, I admitted to scrolling through it, but I haven't really done too much. The goal for this stream is to get through proficiencies. It's only okay. It's 4 pages. I know that's a lot. That's actually a lot for us. So we're trying to get through proficiencies and then get to magic. Magic is one of the chapters or sections I think we'll be able to get through fairly easily. And that there's going to be some skippable stuff. Steve, I see you crossing your arms disapprovingly.
No. I'm surprised. I think we'll have to take our time. I think there'll be a lot of stuff kind of buried in the weeds here. We'll have to dig a little bit. I think in spells.
I think in spells there are. I've noticed, and I'm already aware of some spells that are just not good. But then there's some pretty standard stuff that's very skippable. I think we're going to approach spells like we did weapons and armor. Mm-hmm. So let's get started. Steve, do you want to start reading for proficiencies?
I would love to start reading for proficiencies. So we're on page 51 in the PDF, in the book itself, sorry. So proficiencies. The concept of proficiencies is expanded in the Oriental AD&D game, and to include training of painting, poetry, singing, calligraphy, horsemanship, and other artistic and practical areas besides weapons and fighting. These artistic and peaceful skills are as important to a character as his ability to fight, since the Society of Oriental Adventures emphasizes the character's creative talents almost as much as his combat prowess. All characters receive a number of proficiency slots, blah, blah, blah. So the amount of proficiencies you get depends on your class. Don't think there's anything else really to read there.
No. And again, for the chat, if you're new, we're not going to dive into game mechanics. We're diving into content. Okay, so no, nothing yet. Do you want to continue, Steve?
I would love to. So I'm going to skip the rest of the bold here, where it's just really mechanics. Mm-hmm. But what you get a number of proficiencies for weapons and then non-weapon proficiencies. Moving on to weapon proficiencies and weapon specialization. A character can select a weapon proficiency in any weapon that is allowed to his character class. This is noted in the character sheet. There are costs associated with it. I'm skipping ahead. This looks quite crunchy.
It's pretty crunchy.
So there's one thing that kind of caught my eye a little of the initial number of proficiencies based on classes, and I'm not a fan of the sort of like regular D&D of like, oh, barbarian dumb, very little proficiencies versus more intelligent classes. And over here, it's kind of flipped on its head. At the same time, it doesn't make any sense as well.
It's So there was
The
something
ninja has two.
There was something earlier on about the Oriental Barbarian. Stupid name. There was something
really stupid.
It's a really stupid
the
name.
worst.
Oriental Barbarian, like being more like having like skills in pottery and singing and like all these kind of things. And Miriam, I'm glad you brought that up, because I almost feel like the creators are trying to tell us readers, players, something. And it's that if you are kind of like master of a lot of non-weapon proficiencies, you're kind of like bad. I guess that's like the adjective here. Like you're more like uncivilized almost.
The more you know.
Yeah. It's like that's the dissonance that I'm feeling. And I'm just like, I don't know about that.
Well, there's a phrase for what they're trying to describe with the Oriental Barbarian having all of these proficiencies, and it's the noble savage, and that's what they're trying to do.
Sense. The thing that actually stood out to me is that like it goes into detail in the first paragraph that in the Orient they care as much about your creative talents as about your combat prowess in this time period, when like that was still the case in Europe and the West. Gygax just didn't care about the things a noble was expected to know how to do in the West. And so it's very odd. I would love to compare this with the AD&D like core list of proficiencies to see if like barbarians having an enormous amount of proficiencies is a thing in AD&D, or if this is like some weird thing they're trying to do here. It's just such an odd choice.
It's an odd choice because like, Steve points out, it's like, oh, maybe they're trying to do something good, but it's still not.
Yeah.
And I think this is bordering on like a critique of AD&D in general as well, though.
Yeah, this might end up like a mechanical or cultural critique of AD&D, which is slightly off topic, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think one last thing is that a ninja having two, when as far as I know, like of course my view is maybe not as knowledgeable, but as far as I know, a ninja has to be very skilled.
Yeah. I will say this. I think anybody who is venturing out into the world and fighting monsters should have some degree of skill.
Yeah, because this is shared between your weapons and your everything else, right? So
also, where's Yakuza?
That's not even listed.
Okay.
Oh, but it's super weird.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say that's just an error in the book.
That's just an error in the book, or maybe they're trying to say that Yakuza aren't proficient in anything because they're criminals. But
then they would give them non proficiency weapon penalties.
Yeah, that's true. No, but they are criminals without artistic proficiencies. Because one of the things you'll notice here is that there are non-weapon proficiencies. But we'll get to those. That's more of what I'm interested in for this episode, or this stream at least. Oh yeah, and there's no monk. Somebody pointed out that there's no monk.
Yep.
So taking a look at this, it's pretty standard. People get to pick weapons. Going through, it's just like, there's a good comment in the chat. The Yakuza couldn't leave the city, so they can't get proficient at things. Which is
that's what they're writing.
Which is totally true. Right when a Jay in the chat said gun monk, referring to our last one, I immediately scrolled over Point Blank, and I was like, oh yes, gun monk. That would have been awesome. I'm good to skip to page 52, actually, from page 51. A lot of this is just mechanical flavor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Going into non-weapon proficiencies. I think this is something worth reading. So, in addition to weapons, characters can learn proficiencies in various peaceful arts. Characters will find this knowledge useful. It is customarily expected that characters are more than warriors, priests, or magicians. To be complete, they must also be well-versed in artistic skills. For the well-bred, contests in poetry, painting, and other arts is a popular and frequent event. Winners of these contests gain honor and experience, while losers risk humiliation and loss of favor. Players are well advised to see that their character is adept in many skills beyond those of his immediate profession. Let's unpack that.
Do they have an honor counter yet?
No, because if we had an honor counter, that would... Oh, boy. Although, what we should do is have an honor counter for the next time we stream through an adventure or something, and just how many times is honor in here.
So you gain honor not for being honorable, but for winning contests, regardless of whether or not you honorably win the contest.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That seems very odd.
Well, that's because honor in this book is not really it's treated as a currency. It's treated as something that you can barter with, that you can use to your advantage because it's a game.
I almost feel like silly. It's very kind of Eurocentric, though, in how they talk about I actually had this conversation with someone else at another time, where basically what a lot of people say is honor, and they throw it on like Asian systems. What they really mean is how they see honor in their own culture and society.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they're still using
like chivalry,
priests and magicians, and they're like, I don't know. The one thing that I read into this is like, oh yes, Asian people also are going to be great at fighting, which is basically to me being like all Asians know kung fu. And second, it's, oh yeah, all Asians are good at art, which is all Asians are good at kung fu and can play the violin or piano. And that's what they're saying here.
Only if you're well-bred.
The thing that, like,
only if you're well-bred. Only if you're well-bred. Which also is like, wow, why did they put that in there?
Very
I think it's supposed to be a thing about the nobility, which makes it doubly weird, because this should absolutely be a thing in your Western game. If you're going to make, like, this should not be an exceptional thing here. If you're going to talk about nobles are expected to not just be able to stab people. Yeah, that's expected in Europe as well. Like poetry or illuminated manuscripts, if you're a monk, and all of that stuff was enormous. Like the idea of chivalric romance and all of that is what should be in this section in a non-Oriental game. It's trying to put a thing here that the authors are interested in that they ignore in the setting that they're familiar with, because it's not something they care about.
Yep. Well, it gets a little bit worse in the next paragraph. Peaceful skills are divided into categories like common, artisan, court, and barbarian proficiencies. So there are barbarian proficiencies here. Only barbarian characters can learn barbarian proficiencies. The other categories are given to determine the type of environment the character must be in to learn the proficiencies. The categories also assist the DM in determining proficiencies for NPCs. Thus, a common peasant would know proficiencies from the common list, while the noble will know those from the court list. I am so curious as to what is a barbarian proficiency.
I was going to say, we should totally scroll ahead to the table of barbarian proficiencies.
Scrolling.
Number one.
Very curious.
Here we go.
Number
this
one.
This came out before L5R first edition, right?
I believe so.
Probably, yeah.
L5R 1E uses this distinction almost exactly for common, artisan, court, and martial. And I've played 4th edition.
Yep.
And this is the exact mechanic that it uses to divide its skills up. And I was wondering why on earth they'd done that. And it turns out it's because Gary Gygax did it in the mid-'80s. And no one involved thought 10 years later or something that, like, maybe that's something that should have changed. No, they just lifted it
Or even
wholesale.
20 years later. 30 years later.
Yep. I mean,
Yep.
we're gonna get through this book, and we're eventually gonna read L5R. It's gonna be a thing we're gonna do. Eventually.
I got a message from a friend of mine who's familiar with AD&D, and evidently barbarians having extra proficiencies was just a thing in the original game, rather than a thing specific to Oriental Adventures.
Okay, cool. So it's one of those
That checks
instances.
out.
It's one of those instances where it's like, yes, this is a mechanical thing, but it takes on a different meaning if you're using it
Yeah.
in an Asian setting. So we have barbarian proficiencies.
And sorry, I think that's something that's like worth like repeating a second time. A lot of the ingrained problems of AD&D and D&D in general, when it's framed through this like text of Oriental Adventures, really just kind of makes it way worse.
Exacerbates. Oops, I gotta move that. Give me a second.
But it makes it way worse. So all the sexism we see, all the homophobia that we see, all the racism that we see, it's way, way, way worse.
Oh
When
yeah.
it's framed as this. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted. Please go on in. Let's talk about barbarian proficiencies.
Yep. Okay, so we have
one.
chanting, fire building, running. You are proficient in running, signaling, snare building, sound imitation, survival, and tracking. Could not all of these fall under, well, except for running? That's just stupid.
Survivalist or something?
Could that? I mean, that's just the survival skill that's currently in 5e.
Yeah.
But chanting,
This
I
is
think
biz-
that's
Except for
So-
chanting. Except for
You
chanting.
cannot be proficient in fire building unless you are barbarian. Or
Yep.
running, which I guess it says here running is like running double speed for 8 hours, which is admittedly pretty wild.
So it's just the Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings running across Middle Earth.
I am convinced that they actually just took the previous barbarian, pasted it in, and then put in Oriental in front, possibly in small letters. Though,
they make good couriers.
yeah, yeah, this is like the I'm a scout or like a courier proficiency set, not the
Wouldn't you think that all adventurers would need to know how to make a fire? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Not the Yakuza.
Like,
not the Yakuza, because you don't make fires in cities. You use Oriental stoves, apparently.
Oh my god.
That's what Gygax would say. God.
Oh boy.
why is this keyed off in its little section? All of these are very useful.
I love sound imitation. I would like to have proficiency and expertise in sound imitation. Like, they look at the list though. They said the characters can mimic various creatures of his native land, bird calls, seal barks, and other animal sounds. Like the two you pick, bird calls and seal barks.
Ah,
I mean,
good.
what?
I don't have any words for that one.
It's like, why not like deer or like the elk or a bear? But no, you went bird calls and seal barks.
I guess they wanted to make sure aquatic adventures were welcome as well, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. No, I think, Steve, this is the right approach. I think looking at each table is probably the best way to do it. So I'm going to scroll back up. Oh, wait. No, I don't even need to. I'll stay on this page for Artisan Proficiencies. And again, this kind of looks, I mean, it's a strange assortment. I mean, civil engineer. It's a strange assortment. But again, this looks like it was just taken from standard AD&D.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be a masseur.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
There's nothing wrong with being a masseur, by the way. It's just really odd in this list presented.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It doesn't really fit. I think the only Asian one they put is silk maker. I am proficient in waiting for this worm to make cocoons. And then there's a lot of skill in that. But I'm saying, like, I don't know if a D&D character would care that much.
I actually watched on how silk is made and like silkworms and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
they're
and
cool.
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But it's like something that's coded as very, very East Asian, but also like AD&D is all about being like I say like with air quotes, like a functional character, and they put silk making in this one. It's an odd choice.
Yeah.
But they also have it underneath seamstress/tailor, which is also another odd choice of words for like a fantasy game. And they have them separated. And then there's tanner and leather worker, which I get is separate. And then there's weaver for baskets.
I think my favorite thing here is the implication from the earlier, like, there are skill contests for everything bit about artisanal skills, that there are civil engineering and massage tournaments being held
Yeah.
in this setting regularly.
Well, the most artistic of the Asian characters are literally having bridge building competitions, or
Oh my god.
they're literally like
Civil engineering competition.
civil engineering competition, or like my silkworm beats your silkworm. Wait, that's Pokemon.
I'd play that Pokemon game.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've played that Pokemon game.
I'm just wondering how Monsieur contests work. It's whoever's the most relaxed. Relax you.
I roll to relax the character. Oh, wait.
Man.
I did. I think I checked off that this is a not safe for work stream. Pretty sure I did. I'm good. Well, now that when I post it on YouTube, I'm gonna have to say adult content.
I don't know what Masuris you're going to, but anyways, one other thing I wanted to point out is that seamstress tailor, they was bugging me for a reason, and I was like thinking about it. I googled it. This is the first time that we've seen the female only
Something
like
coded.
noun.
Yeah.
So this is insofar in 50 pages the only woman coded word here.
Oh,
Yeah,
Which
because
is yeah.
yeah, that's right. Actually, and it took us 53 pages to find something.
Yep.
Ugh.
And they could have just used tailor, that is gender
Or
neutral,
seamster.
seamstress, seamster would have worked. Or just use tailor and just save the space. But no, they had to specifically call out that this is the woman's work or also tailor's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a critique on AD&D, and like that's like line editing like problems I have. That is not like an Asian fetishization thing, but like
Mhm.
I see it.
I
I
see
see
it.
you.
I'm not. Yeah, I see it. I am not a fan. I am very confused as to why some of these aren't in commoner, but I guess we'll have to see common proficiencies to see what they're going for.
We'll
with
find
it.
out. Let's go to common proficiencies, and
Yeah.
there we go.
See.
We have agriculture, animal handling, cooking, dance. Okay.
Hey,
Fishing.
villagers can dance.
Yeah, apparently. But dancing is apparently below that of an artist, and barbarians are incapable of dance, apparently.
There aren't dance contests, but
They're
there
busy.
are civil engineering contests.
Yep. But well, I mean, there are for commoners. There's gaming, horsemanship, hunting, husbandry. Okay.
Look, barbarians are too
Yeah,
busy
and
imitating
then-
sounds.
That's animal husbandry, I
and
believe.
chanting.
Yeah, that's animal husbandry. Then they have yaijutsu, which is so odd for it to just sit
What?
there right in common proficiencies.
What?
It's like all of a sudden it's like you can farm. You can farm. Animal handling is basically just would fit under animal husbandry. You can farm, you can dance, you can cook, you can play your common games, and then yaijutsu.
What
You
the-
can read and write.
maybe.
Hey,
You get a
high
points in it.
literacy rate, evidently. You've got a 55% chance of being good at reading, baseline.
Yeah, and then they even describe yaijutsu because not all of them are described. They took the effort to really say what they mean by yaijutsu and reading. And for them, yaijutsu is the art of drawing a melee weapon. So all commoners are just super skilled at drawing weapons.
Quick draw.
Or all commoners can choose to just be real good on the quick draw, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, that is an actual martial art, but it's something
Yeah.
that's so very specifically Japanese. And all of a sudden, commoners have this. And then, of course, there's music, reading, writing, sailing craft, singing, small watercraft, and swimming.
Singing but not chanting. They're too well bred for this.
The fact that they do everything in alphabetical order really bothers me sometimes, because I read sailing craft and then they go singing and then they go small watercraft. And that bugs me every single time. I can't. Yaijutsu is, yes, in the chat, Yaijutsu is, if you've never watched Yaijutsu before, go watch it. There's also this Instagram account, and it's this woman in Japan, and she's just like super skilled at it, and I have to find it, but I will share that on our
I'm convinced that Daniel
Discord.
follows the most interesting Instagram people, because every time you talk about Instagram, I'm like, people do that on Instagram?
Yo, people do that.
And
On
that's
Instagram.
just-
I need to get on Instagram.
That's just
If
where I
people
put my
are doing
lubes.
Yaijutsu on
Like,
Yeah, I mean, I follow DM Steve on Instagram. I follow.
I haven't posted in a while. Don't. Nah.
I do really love Nature is Metal on Instagram, because they did post another. I've talked about it on this stream before, but they did post a video of a praying mantis eating an Asian giant hornet from the face.
I saw that. That was terrifying.
That's also
It
on
was
the news.
still trying to sting after its brain was eaten.
Yep.
It was gross.
Nope.
On the it noted the entire all Asians know martial arts thing, and putting Yaijutsu in common proficiencies really kind of just hammers that in, because the implication for the GM and for the player is that anyone you meet on the road and in town
Yep.
in this area might just be real dedicated to their quick draw technique.
It's
and
literally
cutting
that.
you
It's
down.
this is the equivalent of every person in the Wild West being a quick draw master with their guns. Except in this case, every single commoner in an Asian world can draw a bladed weapon with extreme precision and speed. And they're probably having tournaments. And they're probably having tournaments
you
of
could
this.
just go into your village Yaijutsu tournament.
It
That's where you start. That's where you get in, and then you move up a couple of leagues until you can get into the artisan, then the barbarian.
it's so silly. It's so
Oh,
silly.
This also kind of gets into a mechanical thing, but Yaijutsu is not a check that you can fail. It has just a slash there under base chance of success, which means that not only can any Asian person be proficient in Yaijutsu, any of them who are proficient in Yaijutsu are good at it. So
Yep.
the skill system here is kind of fail forward-y, and that if you roll over the thing, you do it really well. And if you roll under the number, you do it but kind of badly. And if you roll really terribly, you might fail, but that's not the default assumption. And so with Yaijutsu, you just always succeed at this, unless I'm missing something here.
I think.
You just always succeed at it.
The question is, can Yakuza do Yaijutsu? And I mean, Yakuza are just excluded, so who knows? Although it would be really hilarious for a class that is Japanese in origin to not be proficient in this one Japanese skill that they've included in a list of very generic skills, extremely generic skills.
So inexplicably, the Yakuza Proficiency appears to be under its class thing. I just kind of scrolled up to it.
Oh, what? So what is it? What are they proficient in?
It says,
Oh no! I just looked at core proficiencies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's gonna get bad.
Oh my
If that's
god!
anything like L5R, that's gonna get bad.
Oh my
so
god!
Yakuza have 3 proficiency slots and get a free access to the gaming proficiency.
So
Okay.
so I'll read out. So again, some people in the chat are trying to read. So common proficiencies: agriculture, animal handling, cooking, dance, fishing, gaming, horsemanship, hunting, husbandry, animal husbandry, iaijutsu, juggling, music, reading, writing, sailing craft, singing, small watercraft, swimming. Those are common proficiencies. And when you go down to court proficiencies, you have calligraphy, etiquette, falconry, flower arranging, heraldry, landscape gardening. That's the court version of civil engineering. No, which I want to look up. I think isn't it like a stage
As
performance?
a description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a
Origami,
description.
painting, poetry, religion, and tea ceremony. That means commoners cannot have religion? Is that what that means?
Yeah, so a character with religion proficiency knows the basic tenets and teachings of religions common to the land. Commoners, by definition, do not understand the religions they worship.
They don't
in
understand the
Oriental
gods.
Adventures.
This is so stupid.
But they can quick draw.
But they can quick draw.
But they don't understand their gods, but they will quick draw on you if you call them out on it.
Oh boy.
It's well, I can't.
Quick draw while sailing you under.
Well, they can quick draw their weapons to defeat those who maybe have defeated them in a gaming contest. That's it. It's just so dumb. But like they've taken. If when you look at core proficiencies, they've just like, okay, let's take everything that is so stereotypically Asian and put it into one list. So, except for landscape gardening, that's just a weird one. Although I think they're trying to talk about Asian gardens like those that you see in like Japan, Korea, and China.
I have to imagine that they were thinking of Zen gardening, but didn't think of like the actual term for it and just wrote this in as the next best thing.
Yeah.
That seems likely. Most of this this proficiency list is lifted straight for L5R, which is just baffling to me, but also completely unsurprising.
We need to have you with us for the L5R read through.
Oh yeah, I have thoughts. Of note is that, let's see.
Okay, well, read calligraphy. The written language of the Oriental Adventures world is much different from that commonly used in other AD&D settings. Excuse me, so Asian languages are different from Elvish, Dwarvish, and it's okay.
They're much different.
They're much different.
Much different.
Other lands normally make use of alphabets to compose words and words to compose. Okay, this sentence is just moronic. Other lands normally make use of alphabets to compose words and words to compose sentences. However,
Thanks,
here,
Gary.
Thanks, Gary. However, here, the written language is composed of pictographs or logograms. First of all, those are not the same thing. Each character, as a single written pictograph is commonly called, represents a single word or part of a word. Okay, first of all, pictographs and logograms are not the same thing. Not the same thing.
Please explain, Daniel.
Well, okay, when you're talking about the way you think of it is like, okay, modern Chinese characters.
Mhm.
Those are logograms. They are symbolic of something.
Mhm.
But Egyptian hieroglyphs are pictographs because they look like something. Or even ancient Chinese writing looks like what they're supposed to represent. But to say the two are the same is like a gross reduction of what they actually are, and is a really gross reduction of all of the languages of Asia. Because it has this implication that, oh, you are primitive because your writing is just tiny little drawings of things you see.
Yes.
And I don't like that at all, because you take beautiful, beautiful languages. In my opinion, I think the most beautiful written language is Arabic, hands down. I think it is the most beautiful written language in the world. And you take that, and that is an Asian language. You take that Asian language, and you say, oh yeah, they're just pictures. What?
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's doubly weird because it implies that Western calligraphy does not exist, which, if you've ever seen an illuminated manuscript, is clearly not the case.
Yep. Oh God. And then here they go here and they say, and I don't know, and this is the part that I was talking about where I might have been overreacting, but I'm starting to think that I wasn't. Originally, the character was like a small painting of the thing it represented. That's a terrible sentence. But time has simplified and stylized these characters so that they have only a slight resemblance to the thing anymore. Instead, they have meanings that can be added to or changed when used with other characters. Each word has a different character or combination of characters, and thousands of different characters are needed to write books. Great precision is needed to write out clearly and correctly. That might be the stupidest thing. Like, and it's not even racist or Orientalist. It's just stupid.
I wouldn't.
I'm gonna say it's racist. I'll say that. No, I read that as racist.
Okay, well, thousands of different characters are needed to write books. I mean,
you kind of need thousands of characters to
write
a book. Yeah.
I was just like, what have we been reading for the past 2 months?
I really wish I had some booze in the house that I could just pour.
We just take that gif of a J. Pop.
Yeah.
I'm really curious if this description survived the advent of Google. Like, is this in the 3rd edition one?
We will wait and see when we read the 3rd edition one.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about like how language is perceived in like other iterations, but I will definitely keep an eye on it as we go forward here.
I love this.
Yeah, I love this. This was
no. There's a comment in the chat, and it's Asian books require words.
Damn.
That's a shirt.
Hello, Gary.
That's basically what he said. And another thing here is like, time has simplified and stylized these characters. I feel like anybody who is like a linguist or an archaeologist or a historian would be like, what? And it's also to say that the Oriental word has a single unified language. Let's also, because they probably were like, oh yes, Japanese characters are just Chinese. Wait, there's more than one kind of written Japanese language? No, they didn't even consider that. They were just like, oh, Japanese characters, formal Japanese characters, and Chinese characters, formal Chinese characters, look the same. Therefore, all of this Asian world has one unified language. Even though this Asian world has needlessly included several different forms of currency, as we saw in the previous chapter. So they've taken lengths to actually differentiate money by nation, but they say everybody writes the same language.
And I even know a language that has 2 different character sets. Punjabi, you can find it in Urdu, like you can find it on the Pakistan side in the Arabic Urdu script, and you can find it in sort of the Devanagari Hindi script in India. And both of them are Punjabi.
Oh. And then, and this is to say, this is like calligraphy, so artistic writing. Unless we're talking about, is all writing calligraphy? No. Reading and writing is also a common skill, so they're trying to differentiate. Yeah. But still.
Yeah.
This is a very Japanese set, though I guess the entire book.
The entire book is.
Trends.
So, thus, a character's style and artistic ability with an ink brush is an important measure of his social worth in the Oriental Adventures world. The first impression a stranger forms of a character may well be based on how graceful and beautiful his calligraphy style is. Indeed, how well one writes can often be more important than what the writing actually says. What? Therefore, calligraphy is a vital skill for those aspiring to high position in the Oriental Adventures lands. Jeez.
Yeah, kind of went full in with that bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is maybe one of the first times where like I just have so many like feelings that I just can't articulate. In the past, as we've gone through the text, I could be like, okay, let's take a step back. Like let's talk about kind of like the impact it's having on me and like how I'm feeling about it. But right now, the only thing I can articulate is like, this makes me feel really gross. I just feel like bleh. And that's, if you're writing an RPG and you have a reader who's like, bleh, that's enough to like go back and like fucking redo it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just had a shower before the show, and I need to have another one.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, this.
Thanks for being our guest.
Thanks for joining us for this stream of Asians Read.
Your prize is an unshakable feeling of filth.
I'm just very upset by just this whole thing. So let's keep moving on.
Actually,
Unless you want to say something about like social status and the ability to write artistically.
So I will say I like that calligraphy is called out. I feel like that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's.
I think back to the Jet Li movie Hero, and like there's a big
when he's got the big brush.
Yeah, the big brush, and he's trying to figure out like the 13th way to write the word sword. Right? Like there are like 12 known ways, and he has like commissioned this master to be like, show me the 13th way to write this word. And I'm like, that's really cool. That feels like really on theme. It has like a lot, it's like dripping with like drama. I liked it a lot. This is not it. This is way super far removed. Like you could never tell that kind of story with what's written here. And like that makes me feel gross and sad at the same time.
I feel like they would have been better off not having a description for calligraphy. Just like for like flower arranging and landscape gardening.
I would have loved a description of landscape gardening.
Yes. I want to know what they meant by that. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be Zen gardens or
I think it
stuff,
is.
or if it's meant to be like, I'm a landscaper. Welcome to our annual landscaping competition here at the castle. You will have 3 years to create the perfect lawn out front.
I just read ahead. I just read ahead to etiquette, and it gets worse.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I bet.
The correct form of address and social and proper social manners are another important skill for characters. The Oriental Adventures Society can be extremely proper and polite, and failure to abide by the correct forms of behavior can result in a serious loss of honor. In everyday situations, it is assumed that characters are behaving acceptably, unless the player tells the DM something to make him think otherwise.
What the fuck?
I know exactly what they're saying there. In formal ceremonies, an audience before the emperor, or a formal duel, for example, the character must roll a die to see how successful his etiquette. And I think they're supposed to say is, but there's a space between the end of etiquette and period. Does he use the correct form of address? Does he speak, laugh, or yawn at the wrong time? Failure of etiquette in such situations result in losses of honor and poorer reactions from important NPCs. The DM should not let the etiquette proficiency overrule the role-playing part of the player. If the player has controlled his character correctly, there is no correct way to control a D&D character or play D&D, first of all. This is so AD&D. This is so Gygax. There is no need for a die roll. If the player has just described a gross indiscretion committed by his character, there is no need for a die roll. The etiquette proficiency is to be used as a guide, and the DM should not hesitate to overrule it based on the character's described actions. Honestly, you should just overrule that entire section. I think it first of all, they explicitly say that all Asian characters who have court proficiencies are by default rigidly polite.
Of course they are.
It's
there's a lot to unpack in this, and like this might be the first stream where like I feel like pretty low on energy. Even like we only been going for like an hour or so, and I'm already like this section for whatever reasons it hit me hard.
I think because it's just pretty relentless about just
stereotypes.
The proficiencies in specific is just like the first 2 are just here are a grab bag of stereotypes. We're going to dump them onto the table. They're going to be repeated in RPGs for the next 35 years.
They could have. The only thing they could have done worse is said, "You roll to see how deep you bow." That's the next step. And this is so bad.
I hate the like selective application of these things only to Oriental societies, where
When-
like,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, where like, oh, so the way this is described makes it implicit that you are not expected to be proper and polite and stuff in a European court, because we're not that rigid and the like, and I never really went into the history there that much. It's not like anyone's been executed for disrespecting a king in Europe before, have they?
No.
Oh.
And like, it's this very selective application of this codified idea of what a people is and are allowed to be in their eye that elides an enormous amount of history in the East, in Japan, while also ignoring a bunch of history in the West. Because like, if you had, so Pendragon, for example, is this game about Arthuriana, and
Yeah.
it has some of these in practice. It's got an honor system and like stuff regarding etiquette and falconry, and it's largely not a problem because it's based on this particular thing in European history. And if that got ported to playing samurai in Meiji era, or not Meiji,
I think it's the type of like
period
Edo.
Japan,
The
yeah,
Edo.
Edo Japan, for example, I don't think it would be that big of a deal, or at least it wouldn't be running into things this hard, because it would basically just be going, here are the social norms you followed in the West, there are different social norms here, but you're basically using the same mechanic. Whereas here in Oriental Adventures, and later on in like L5R and the like, you have it where etiquette and calligraphy and like non-martial pursuits aren't expected of you in the West. They're only expected of you in the East, in Japan, because we view this thing in this way, which is where a lot of the problem comes from, as I see it. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, this isn't my culture being talked about. It's just kind of how I see this in the lens of Orientalism as a whole.
You know what I will say? This isn't my culture they're talking about either.
Yeah, that's, yeah. It very much mono-focused on Japan.
I feel like
and not even, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Miriam.
Yeah, sort of piggybacking off of Bashir, that it's like they take all the problematic things that they view in Western, like, you know, especially medieval sort of society, all these things about etiquette and culture and sort of not going above your station, and getting to play with it and sort of critique it and do whatever without calling out their own culture. And using, like, it's almost like they want to other it so that they don't have to look at themselves.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I think
Like,
both what you said is super powerful. I love that.
So the next two on the list, falconry and heraldry, are a lot less problematic. And I know, like, heraldry, I'm certain that's because heraldry is a skill in AD&D.
It's in AD&D. Falconry is, I mean, falconry is
all over Asia.
Over Asia. Let's be honest, all over
yeah.
Asia. So that's not that bad. And then they go into like and like the drama. That's an odd choice. It's very specific. They could have just said like theater.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, they could have said theater or dramatic theater. I don't know why they have to like code it as Japanese.
Because then it would include all the different types of theater. Like, you know, like even though kabuki is not there, kabuki could have easily been thrown in, or whatever other theater styles that are there. Also,
there are no other styles of theater. The only style of theater in Karatur is no.
Yep. And it's weird because, you know, we're going to get into the world of Karatur, but right now it's telling us that Karatur is very much, you know, the same across a broad geographic region. It's like everything there is identical. And then they're going to tell us later on in the book that everything there is different, and they're going to throw all of this, you know, out the window. And then we go to tear ceremony, which is
I'm gonna call out that the no is a clear example of like fetishization for me, at least when I read it. And it's because if you read the words, it says that this is a type of theater that demonstrates grace and beauty. And when you use grace and beauty to describe purely just Asians, you are clearly saying something about how you perceive people who are not yourself, right? That is a problem. And it implies that Asians only have theater that like show these two things, and they didn't write theater about dumb shit like the Europeans did. And that is false. There are dumb plays all over the world. That's life.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But also, I mean, they're talking about like, very gentle, graceful arts. And this is not only just fetishizing Asian people, like the tea ceremony and the way they fetishize Asian women, and the way this book has had such a profound influence on other people. But also, like, this is also that idea of making all Asian men very feminine as well. And that's another thing that we've kind of run into with this, especially with these court arts. What would be a really cool court proficiency? Some sort of like, I don't know. See, the thing is, when you say court proficiency, you're looking for a skill that could be applied to all Asian cultures that you've drawn from. But in saying that this is a Pan-Asian book, you'd have to find something that would be found in all courts, or at least something that could be reduced to a single acultural thing. Ugh.
I mean, I could think of diplomacy, but that's sort of like it's applicable anywhere, really. Because at courts are essentially like lobbying, if you think about it in a modern context.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Courts are reasonably universal
They are.
In the time period. Through now, really.
Mm-hmm.
But like, just a lot of the names and the locations have changed, but a lot of this stuff is pretty universal, and there is a lot of attempt being made to exoticize it. And I thank you for pointing out like the stuff about how they phrased no, because I kind of just missed that, and that was something.
Yeah, let's move on. Honestly, this episode is hitting me harder than I thought it would.
I would like to end this section actually with like I try so hard to like find positive things. Like I try really hard to find positive things that I've seen from these sections. I like calling out art forms specifically that are important to cultures. I think that's important. That's great. I don't think it's appropriate to talk about it put mechanics to it that don't relate to the stories those pieces of those cultures tell. So like when you talk about calligraphy, you just talk about being weird and foreign. There's more to that. And the way you've written it clearly writes it that it's weird and foreign, and you're kind of done with it. And like it's now like a thing to like appropriate and play with, and that causes harm. The fact that having calligraphy in there doesn't necessarily cause harm. It's how it was presented to the reader.
You know what would have been a better way of doing this section? So let's say that they were doing Oriental Adventures and they wanted to just take from all over Asia, but they wanted to have some sort of court proficiencies for wherever part of Asia you were going to be in. What they could do is say, okay, the dramatic theater would be one of them. That's what I would do. I would just call it dramatic theater. And then what they could have said, they would say like, oh, here are some historical or cultural analogs to that. And then they could have listed a whole bunch of real life forms of dramatic theater across all of Asia. They could have done that. Right? But they didn't. What's so weird about Oriental Adventures is that they take liberties to try to make things very, very fantastical, but then they're also incredibly lazy with their skills and how they name things. It's like, oh, what is the money of this region? Oh, let's call it the yuan, the modern Chinese dollar. Right? Yeah. What is going to be our dramatic theater? Let's just pick one form of Japanese theater and make it that across, all of Asia. It's ridiculous. But yeah, let's move on. We're in magic now. We're in magic, and this is a section that we could go for hours on magic, but I think we should be cognizant of the time we've spent on the book and how much more bullshit we have to go through. So
Yeah.
I think a good idea is to go through the spell. So we have the spell list for the Shukenja, table 62, and we can look through those spells. Like, I already see one. Detect Harmony.
Yeah.
What?
Detect Harmony and Omen are ones that interest me out of this, because both could, in theory, be pretty bad.
I'm also curious about what they make what tongues. I know tongues is a spell that appears in D&D, but I want to see what their Oriental version of tongues is.
I also see a lot of snake spells.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's first read.
A lot of these are just straight ports, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of them are ports, which is why I think a lot of it can be skipped, but we should look to see if they've made changes. Now, Shukenja, let's just go through the text here first. Now, I'm just going to give it a quick read through in my head.
Yeah. While you do that, I do want to say I had some conversations after our streams, and I love that. I love when people approach me after these streams, be like, "I have some thoughts, and I want to discuss it more." And I totally get it that not everyone can be in the chat. Some people want to talk to us outside of this. Perfectly fine. If I have the energy, happy to do it. Someone mentioned something very interesting about Shukenja. And we covered Shukenja in one of the earlier episodes.
Yeah.
And our general critique was that it's fucking boring. There's nothing here.
It's lazy.
It's stupid. And they're actually, in AD&D, after you read that, really what you should be thinking as the reader, the intent should be, that's a really good hireling. Which is not good design. That's bad design. And that's totally valid. We aligned on that. But Shukenja, make a great hireling that just you don't have to pay a whole lot because they don't really value money and they can kind of heal you. So cool, I guess.
I mean, that's another thing. It's just poor game design that's made something not very interesting and takes a lot of value away from that character. Another one that I'm very interested in is Holy or Unholy Word, because that's just Christianity. I really want to. So what's our list of spells that we're going through?
Should we get our guests to kind of read out some spells here, and then we can read some descriptions?
Okay, so which first level spells do we want to take a look at? So
Snake Charm.
Obviously, Detect Harmony. Detect Harmony and Snake Charm.
Snake Charm.
Omen might be interesting, but if it's a port from AD&D, and I'm not sure if it is, it's probably nothing special.
Or you know what we should just do? Let's just scroll by page and just see what we're looking at. Okay, a lot of these do look like ports so far. It's interesting because they talk about holy scriptures, and religion here is, they just don't touch on religion at all, and religion is so complicated.
But it's a skill.
But if you're a commoner, you can't.
So alphabetically going through it, I think Omen's going to appear first on kind of what we want to read. So Bashir, if you scroll to Omen.
All right. Oh.
I would love to hear you.
No. Beneficients. Read Beneficients.
Read Beneficients.
Oh, okay. Let's read Beneficients. The Beneficent spell surrounds the Shukenja in an aura of mystical harmony and wisdom. All who see him recognize him as a holy man of virtue and kindness, and many are predisposed to treat him in a friendly and respectful manner. The spell gives the Shukenja a bonus of plus 20% on encounter reaction rolls with most NPCs and creatures. Only those who are sworn enemies of the character, his race, his class, or what he represents are immune to the effects of the spell. Nor does the spell work on creatures who have no understanding of the Shukenja's position or role. Thus, the spell is unable to affect the reactions of a den of tigers or a group of bandits waiting to waylay the unwary. It can, however, affect the reactions of a group of peasants or a village of ninjas, provided the latter are not hired to harm the Shukenja. Beneficence does not deprive those affected of their free will and does not cause them to instantly follow the suggestions of the Shukenja. Their reactions are improved for everyday dealings, not very unusual events.
This is the Asian version of my child. That's what that is. It's just bad. I picked that up because of the mystical harmony and wisdom. It's bad. Okay, let's move on. Sorry. So
I just want to know where that village of ninjas is.
I know.
This is way before Naruto. Where did he get this idea from?
That poor village of ninjas.
Obviously,
they have no proficiencies.
Obviously, Gary Gygax secretly wrote Naruto, and it was stolen. It was appropriated.
We're on a game about a village of ninjas who, because they have so few proficiencies, can't function as a village and are just desperately trying to improvise around all the common skills they don't have. But I think our next one's Detect Harmony.
No, it's Detect Harmony.
Oh yeah.
It's reworded Detect Alignment.
Yeah.
But they used Harmony to make it Asian.
Also, it's area instead of per person. Which
because remember, all Asian people are polite and really good at drawing weapons.
Go ahead, Miriam.
I feel like this is something out of My Little Pony. Detect Harmony.
Look, I will say though.
Care Bears.
Look, I will say, My Little Pony: Tales of Equestria is a very well designed game. Knowing nothing about My Little Pony, I do own the book, and it's very well designed. It has a friendship mechanic, and it's a great primer to those who want to learn how to play 5th edition. So if you have kids and you're quarantined, this isn't an ad, even though it sounds like an ad. If you have kids and you're quarantined, My Little Fantasy, Tales of Equestria is a wonderful RPG to introduce them to.
Oh no, like I love My Little Pony. It just feels like this feels more in tune with that game than this game.
Hashtag not sponsored, but you know who I want to shout out while we are here, and they are in the chat, Lucky Hand Dice. Not a sponsor, but also like an amazing community member.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite dice are Lucky Hand Dice. So I know that Lemmy is in our chat. If you are looking for beautiful, artisanal, sharp-edged, handcrafted dice, Lucky Hand Dice. Check it out. Always sold out. Can never get a set.
Detect Harmony.
But yeah, Lemmy, we love you. You're the best.
All right, let's move forward.
Yep.
Omen.
So I'm of two minds about this because, like, either if this was in the original game, I actually really like this as a spell because it feels like the sort of thing priests should be doing all the time in a fantasy game or even in like a historical game. Because like that's very much something that was done to this day. Like people still check their signs in the newspaper. Like omen reading is something that still very much happens. But if it's not in the original, and this is purely in for Oriental Adventures, then this is an issue portraying with like a superstitious mystical East. And I'm curious as to which one that is.
This feels like the forefather of like spell of like Wheel and Woe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just from like a quick glance at reading it, but yeah, I'm with Bashir. If this appeared only in Oriental Adventures and not in AD&D, then yeah, it's a little sort of othering. Well, not little. It's definitely othering and like fetishizing just a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry, I completely zoned out. I zoned out because I was thinking about Gygax writing Naruto, and all I was just picturing Gygax and being like, and then Naruto will become the Hokage, full circle. That's what I thought up in my head. I'm so sorry.
So I did a really.
You were busy having an open.
Quick Google search. It looks like Omen is a spell specific to Shukenja and Mugen.
It is. This is. We're just looking at the Shukenja spell section right now. And those two classes are, I think, the equivalent of the divine classes in this book.
So yeah, it's definitely an otherized version of Wheel and Woe. To no one's surprise.
Yeah. Speaking of otherized spells,
Snake Charm.
Snake Charm.
Read it to me. Miriam, do you want to read this one out?
Sure. Casting the spell sets up a hypnotic pattern which causes one or more snakes to cease all activity except a semi-erect swaying posture. The duration of the spell is 3 to 6 turns of cast when the snakes are in a torpor, 1 to 3 turns if the snakes are active but not attacking, and 5 to 8 melee rounds if the snakes are angry or attacking. The Shukenja's hit points are the total amount of hit points of snakes that may be affected by the spell, and may represent a single snake or many one of them. I feel like there's going to be a lot of dick jokes on this.
Oh, we already got one. I think that the only way this could be worse is if they said a required component is a wooden flute.
Yeah, like,
and for you to sit in a cross-legged position.
Indian racism into this?
Like somehow you just gotta do this.
So I'm being told that this is actually an AD&D spell.
Yes, it is.
Now,
yes.
Even though this is an AD&D spell, the fact that it's in an Asian book is another example of sort of the implications of just lazily porting AD&D things into an Asian setting. Because
it's porting racist AD&D things into an Asian setting.
Yeah, but it makes them even more overtly racist, putting them in an Asian setting.
I would love to coin a term that talks about how if you have racist shit in your game, and you try to make like another like module that's a racist piece of shit, the amplification of that, like the bioessential amplification, something like that, like bioamplification, something happens and the lens makes it way worse. Yeah. Snake charm is like, I think, like the textbook example of how you have something shitty written in AD&D, and when you port it to Oriental Adventures, it got that much shittier.
I mean, a lot of the things that they just took from AD&D and stuck into Oriental Adventures got way worse. Okay, so there's Trance that comes right after Snake Charm. It's similar. It's not too bad. Let's keep moving. We have a Chant, which I thought was a skill, a proficiency.
Yeah. It's mechanically, it looks like a slightly better version of Bless, which,
or like a bard, like almost like the bardic inspiration in like 3rd edition.
So looking at the 2nd level list, I think it's pretty much just like snake summoning of interest here.
Which one?
Which is animal summoning, but snakes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just specifically snakes. Just snakes.
Yep. Just snakes.
You can speak with animals, but you can summon snakes.
Ugh. Let's move on.
So I'm gonna pause here because I feel that snakes in many different cultures signify a lot of different things. And if you have a Eurocentric lens on the snake is what causes the fall of mankind and also shows the weakness of women, and you try to port that over to anything else that isn't Eurocentric, you're gonna have a bad time.
You're gonna have a terrible time, and that's what we're seeing here. I think page 60 is pretty meh. It's just copy paste, except they add Shukenja to some of the descriptions. No motivation.
Oh,
no.
Snake summoning action.
Uh-oh. Bashir froze. We're never gonna know. Oh, there we go. Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I looked at snake summoning, and it's not you summon snakes to you. Oh. It's not you summon snakes to you. It's in an area around you, all snakes that are there follow you around and are hypnotized. Which, no, I've frozen.
It's like the Pied Piper.
No, you're good.
Okay.
How's that different from Snake, the 1st level spell? Because that pretty much had a similar thing, too.
It is. It's snake charming, but for many snakes.
So you can't have expertise in snake charming.
Well, snake charming makes them erect. So that's
semi-erect and swaying. Semi-erect and swaying. So
that's important.
If you just said erect and not semi-erect and swaying, the YouTube comments, they would have been like, it's wrong. It's semi-erect and swaying. How dare you?
Then I got to go on my phone and in like iOS notes, write like a 4-page apology and like screenshot and put it on my tweet.
Oh yeah, I love how you like iOS notes.
So you gotta summon them first, and then you gotta charm them to make them semi-erect.
Semi-erect, but you could only do it. But you could only do it one at a time. You could only make them semi-erect one at a time.
But yeah, you can Pied Piper snakes. I guess we're just kind of getting in random stereotypes about the Middle East and India and putting them in Japan for this part of the book.
Like, we're now, all we need to do is get a flying carpet and a whole new world, and there you go.
Hey, we're not even on magic items or anything yet, so I mean, don't. I'm gonna go through editing and save the clip where Miriam predicted magic carpets, and then we're just gonna go back to that when they eventually arrive, or when we all look through Al Qadim.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Looking through this list, these seem pretty normal. And then we get to Snake Barrier at 4th level. Is there anything before that we want to get into? Because I'm kind of just zeroing in on snakes right now.
What is Castigate?
Castigate? I think that's an AD&D spell.
That's an AD&D spell.
Oh, okay. Because for a second it took me... Okay, maybe because we're all talking about snakes, it put me in a place.
No. I get that.
Yep. Valid.
Yeah, it's
Valid.
just you yell real loud and people go deaf.
Okay.
And you do some. You can do some damage to people who aren't your alignment.
Okay. Let's move on.
Yes. So, Snake Barrier. Where is it? Oh, wait.
I'm literally scrolling page by page. Bashir's just like, let's find all the snake spells.
I know what I am looking for now. Yes, a painful. This is a barrier against snakes.
Okay, so imagine here. I found a spell, possess animal. Now imagine we're just like power gaming now. Imagine you've made all these snakes semi-erect and swaying. Now you can possess them.
And now you can make them fully erect.
That's the answer, because there was a question in chat. How do you make them fully erect? Yeah, I'm 100% gonna have to put a little like content warning on this one.
Yep.
For
Who
a good
knew spells could get this?
For a good 30 minutes, we talked about semi-erect and
swaying postures.
Snakes.
Yes, and your magical barrier against snakes that keeps snakes from approaching you.
I guess we need that while we're walking the streets at night.
Does it actually say that it works on dragons? Because that would be really interesting.
It says including dragons.
Which
of burying the lead.
Snake barrier, page 67.
67. Okay, we've skipped ahead. That's why I'm going. Okay, looking for bad shit. Looking for bad shit.
Snake barrier.
Okay.
Look, every woman needs snake barrier while they're walking at night.
Yes, really.
Reanimation
No,
reward.
boy, you are kind of like, it's kind of burying the lead when you go snake barrier, 2 square feet per level, and then you look at it and it says, yes, you can repel dragons in an radius around you.
Side note: as I'm making my way to snake barrier. Making my way downtown. Sorry. I found a spell that I think they ported from AD&D. It's called Remorse, aka Asian Guilt. The spell.
Oh no!
It is a stern lecture.
It
says stern lecture.
It's a stern lecture. I'm just gonna skip past that because we all know. Okay, snake barrier. I've made it. Wow. There's some bad shit here. But mostly just really hilarious. Like, and then again,
we've crossed from furious racism into hilarious gag spells.
So my question to everyone, and I think I know the answer, but I want to pose this as a question to the audience. And it's, if you were writing this book and it is meant to be a supplement to your player's handbook or your Dungeon Master's Guide, why even bother putting all these spells here? Or why not just put new, air quotes, Oriental spells?
Yeah. So
it's an odd choice.
I think a
because that's what
thing.
Because that's what they did for the 3rd edition one.
Yeah. So I think it's just kind of an AD&D thing where full spell lists keep getting reprinted and their text printed out, and then later on, as it kind of matured as a product, people figured out maybe we don't need to reprint all the spells every time. We can just put the new ones here, and for the others, say, refer to player handbook.
I think there's a misconception for these writers at this time that based on your setting, the spell description had to change. So if I go backwards 2 or 3 pages to bless weapon or weapon bless or something like that, it gives you an example where you can't say that my weapon is strong against a kappa. You have to say that your weapon is strong against a kappa who lives in the Changshin like mountain or whatever it is, and like that's the text in there, and I'm like, that's clearly not an AD&D. That's clearly meant just for this book, and it's like it's not necessary. People can understand the example in various contexts. It's kind of insulting.
Yep.
It feels a little almost like pedantic. There's a story that my husband keeps saying about
Be right
Lard Bactron, where essentially people are like the players are camping or something, and they're near a river, and it's like, oh, do you drink the water? Yeah, I drink the water. Okay, roll for dysentery because you didn't say you boiled it first.
Which is, look, running water generally pretty safe. So even that is like, I'm like, anywho, snake barrier. I'm still on snake barrier. The fact that it works on dragons pisses me off. I think,
Yeah.
I think a ton of people would be like, snakes and dragons are super different, and
Yeah.
even I think European, like people like in like European countries would also agree that dragons and snakes are super different. And
Not for Asians.
not for Asians though, because their dragons are like long bodies, right? They're noodle dragons, so therefore they must be snakes.
Did you say noodle dragons?
What do you call them?
Dragons? Dragons?
So I call them noodle dragons for very specific reasons, because when I say dragon, a lot of people have like a very specific dragon in mind. They think of like Smaug, right? And so I'm like, I'm talking about noodle dragons, and it saves me from having to describe like what I mean by an Asian dragon.
You know what's really interesting though? The Asian dragon hasn't always been a noodle dragon. So if you look at
Oh, here's the history lesson. I love this.
look, this is not history, this is prehistory. As I actually, you know what's really interesting? I heard a British archaeologist once call prehistory pre-interesting. And that I mean, there's a lot there to unpack. But if you look at early, like Neolithic Chinese jade carvings, now jade in China is a little bit different. If you like the word for jade implies beautiful stone, so it doesn't always refer to the stones nephrite or jadeite, which are true jades. But if you look at early Neolithic Chinese jade carvings of dragons, they actually look like pigs.
What?
Yeah. So if you're on like Google or something, and you just search like Neolithic Chinese dragon, let me see if you could pull it up.
Yeah, I'm into this.
See the yeah, you'll see those circular sort of pendants. A lot of them look more pig-like. If you look at some of the older ones.
You know, I never made that connection. They look like just like dragons to me.
Yeah. A lot of the very early ones look like pigs. If you go way back, they look like pigs. The quarantine kind of messed with a lot of the things that I had planned for Asians Represent. One of the things we were going to do is actually go to the Royal Ontario Museum and sit down with the curator of East Asian archaeology and go over weapons and artifacts. It's still in the works. It'll happen. But we couldn't do that prior to doing this series. But yeah, dragons in Asia are often associated with snakes, but their roots lie in many different animals. And even the Chinese dragon itself has the characteristics of other animals. If you look at the art on page 69, you'll see that like
nice.
69.
Sorry, we've been talking a lot of stuff.
Sorry, you see two semi-erect noodle dragons. Now you'll see that the dragons have the talons of birds of prey, right? They have the whiskers of catfish. They have the antlers of like a deer or an elk. They have the manes of like a lion, and then the body of a snake. Mm-hmm. So when I see like And I don't even take this is not I don't even find this offensive, but when I see people say, "Oh yeah, Chinese dragons or snakes," I'm like, no. Chinese dragons are so when I say Chinese dragons are dragons, it's because they're not just one animal, and they're their own thing.
I always felt they were like feline serpentine sort of a thing.
Yeah, they're like a it's almost like a chimera,
Yeah.
but it makes sense.
Even European dragons are really chimeras, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Totally.
and I love that. I love the connection that dragons are like this amalgamation of like animals that scared us, kind of. That's a theme that's baseline everyone can enjoy. And if you wrote that dragons are, I'm going my game design tangent now. If you wrote that dragons are amalgamations of animals that people know and are afraid of, you just open up a ton of stuff for the GM and players to make really, really impactful mythical creatures on their own for their own game.
But
like, that's wonderful.
But here's the thing, though. When you say fear is often associated with creatures and monsters that are evil. But in Asia, the dragon isn't always an evil creature.
This is true. Yeah.
It's a benevolent creature. So we're looking at creatures who have the characteristics of very important animals put together.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
we could
absolutely right.
We could do a whole thing on just dragons and monsters.
Yeah,
which we'll eventually have to get to if we go through like an L5R monster manual.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I think I found 2 more spells that might be interesting to talk about. Ancient Curse and Divine Wind on page 70 and 71.
Oh, these are 7th level spells. So Ancient Curse. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah.
Or at least read out the part that you want us to discuss.
So it's by means of this spell, the Shukenja calls down a terrible and lasting curse upon those of evil ways. The spell can only be cast on those who have performed some great wickedness. The spell is granted to the Shukenja directly by his deity, and the intended victim must be known before the spell is taken. As such, the GM controls the use, yada, yada, yada. It's basically like Ancient Evil Curse as a spell for like, grave robbers or whatever, or like that and I'm not sure how much that and I guess I'm more curious on other people's opinions on how orientalized that is as a thing to have in the game, just because it's basically the like you see it in a lot of fables, I guess, where someone does something wrong and then is cursed and suffers this long-lasting punishment. And I'm wondering, like Omen, if that's a thing that was in the original game and just kind of got ported over, or if it's a thing brought up due to perceived Asian connections with ancient curses.
You know what, this whole ancient curse, it makes me, it doesn't make me think about a lot of like super Asian themes. I think of like Asian like tombs. From an archaeological perspective, I think of them not as places of curses. But when I do think of ancient curse, I immediately think of all the white people who freaked out after they opened up Tutankhamun's tomb and all thought they were cursed. That's immediately what I thought of.
Yeah.
Because they all started dying, not because of their terrible habits or anything like that, but because they opened up the final resting place of a dead kid. The ancient curse is a weird one. It's a weird one because it's something that somebody would assume all ancient cultures have in some form or another, and they've tried to codify it into an Asian world as something like very specific.
Yeah, but it's very like you have curses all over.
Yeah, curses are all over, and why ancient? But I think they say ancient because there's so much emphasis in this game, especially in the family section, on your connection to your ancestors. And to them, ancestors must mean ancient. That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm very confused by the name just because it's not an ancient curse. It is a curse we're casting in the moment that will last for a while.
But you're invoking.
It's like a blood curse or something.
Yeah,
you know?
that's fair.
It's still just not a well-designed spell. Even if this was an AD&D one, it's just not well-designed.
So I found something in the 5th level spells, one line that really kind of like got my attention.
Yeah.
It's right at the start, advice, where it says this spell allows Shukenja to give profound and thoughtful advice
Yeah.
to any creature of at least low intelligence.
Wait, which page
Like,
is this? Which page is this?
This is page
67.
67.
Okay, we'll go back.
The snake barrier.
Oh. Oh, advice.
These can be instructions to do anything, including acts obviously foolish or self-destructive.
But like low intelligence, that
Yep.
just
Ugh.
oh gosh.
That's just
Oh.
not even. That's just bad. Not even from an
I'm
Asian
wondering
perspective.
if
It's just bad.
This is
I'm
like
wondering if
dominate
that's
or
meant
something.
To be... Oh, this is suggestion.
This is suggestion. This is
Yeah.
suggestion.
So low intelligence is just like you cannot cast this on animals and creatures that don't have like
No,
language,
but it says
right?
off at
Yeah.
least low intelligence.
Yeah.
Well, the way the wording here is bad, but suggestion is a little bit better.
Yeah, so like suggestion in the more recent editions has a thing in it saying that like a creature has to have at least 3 intelligence because anything below 3 intelligence is classified as like animals and stuff.
Yep. Okay, I'm scrolling back down.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Mary, I'm with you. When it says like at least low intelligence, you've opened up. Mendez wrote a lot about this. You've opened up the door for harm, even if as a designer that was not your intention.
yeah.
The matter is
Yeah.
you haven't proactively told the GM don't be shitty, which sometimes you just have to do, especially with spells that manipulate people's thoughts and emotions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So because you've left the door open for this kind of interpretation, you undoubtedly will cause harm at some table. You just don't know when, and you will never be able to stop it.
See, this is why that kind of spell is much better suited to more narrative focused games like PBTA games,
Mhm.
because those games encourage active conversation about what is actually happening, whereas games like D&D tell you what should be happening. So the negotiation is optional in D&D, where it is mandatory in more narrative games. That's why, some of these things don't work. And even in more recent and more modern games, these things don't work. I mean, think about there is a spell it's a bard spell in Pathfinder 1st edition, and it's called Compel Violence.
Oh.
And you can make people, literally make people riot. Or there's the demagogue archetype for the bard in Pathfinder. And you literally have an ability where you can go into a town and all of a sudden become a celebrity. And people will gather around you. And then what do? I cast Incite Violence. Like,
There is
there's some
inside riot in 5th edition in Xanathars, I think.
Yeah. So there's some like really bad stuff that still shows up in modern RPGs. I think any spell that really takes away the agency of another character is a tough one to put in a game with such strict rules. Mm-hmm. With very strict rules. And I get they have a place in the narrative and they're evocative and they're scary, which is what they're supposed to be. But they're not scary to players when they're just using them as they wish against NPCs and monsters. That's just my take. That's my hot take on suggestion. I'm reading Divine Wind, and it's the mighty hurricane force winds at the Shukenja's. Yeah, that's.
It's like the kamikaze.
It's
from,
the
like,
kamikaze.
Japanese history, just as a spell.
Yep.
Which
it's a bad choice of words. It's not a bad spell, but it's a bad choice of words. Honestly, it's a pretty neat spell. It's just a bad choice of name. I really don't like
Divine
that.
Wind makes me think. It definitely puts me in the toilet humor, where
Oh yeah, 100%. The chat's been full of that.
From the moment I said it, that was.
Ajay does bring
due.
up a really good point. Divine Wind is just Asian lactose intolerance. It's true. Okay, let's move on. There's a spell called Quest. That's interesting, but that's not racist
That's
or
just
anything.
normal D&D stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess we're on the Wu Gen spells, and let's see.
Oh, but they did do. Oh wait, they did do Reincarnate.
Oh,
now
that's also just a
Reincarnate is just a pre-existing spell, but Reincarnation is a theme that appears in Asian religion. So this is something to kind of take a close look at, only because we have an instance where an AD&D spell actually has some like cultural implications when used in Oriental Adventures.
And it has
So
more cultural animals
yeah,
in the table.
yeah, and Drake is an interesting one because when I think of Drake, I think of like a European sort of dragon. Correct me if I'm wrong though.
I was kind of thinking of a
yeah,
rapper.
But, of what? Of the rapper?
Of the rapper.
Is he really a
Represent
rapper?
the six.
Is he really a rapper? Is he more of like a talk singer?
He's a Degrassi student
Hip-hop.
who's really struggling.
Jimmy. But yeah, I thought that it warned, just bringing up the fact that this is the first time where we've seen a spell in Oriental Adventures that is very, very, very Asian, just by virtue of its name and what it does. And I wanted to look at it because I was wondering if honor had something to do with it, but it doesn't. That would have made it extremely racist.
Oh, Resurrection here, actually, just a couple spells over, does in fact have an honor requirement in Oriental Adventures.
There we
No
go.
You need at least
It does 50
honor to be resurrected.
You have
and
to
does
own
not
so much
work on you.
property in order to be resurrected.
Resurrected, but not I guess resurrected allows you to become yourself and reincarnate. Well, this is silly because everything in reincarnation is something you ideally don't want to be as a character, unless you want to be an ogre mage.
Well, like
You've
ogre
5%.
mage, human,
Or human, but the resurrection
But yeah.
is literally I get to be myself, but I can only be so honorable.
Yeah.
Well, you could always gamble on the what you're gonna reincarnate as, and take that 5% chance you turn out to be human, if that's what you really want to be.
Yeah, I guess. I know that at least we have a spell that has honor in it right now. And not because it's good, but because, it was bound to happen. So, we are on Wu Gen spells right now. Now, I kind of want us to stop here. Mm-hmm. We have 10 minutes left in our stream. And I think, as always, we should, give our guests opportunities to, once again, shout out all of their projects, what they got going on, where people can find them on the internet, and then talk about what Asians Represent is doing. So, Bashir, do you want to once again tell the audience what you do, who you are, and how they can find you on the internet?
All right, I'm Bashir Gauss. I am a indie RPG writer as well as a freelance RPG writer. I work with a bunch of companies in the industry. I've worked with Paizo, Cobalt Press, etc. And I put out my own games at havocfet.itch.io. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/havocfet, where I write about the industry and my games, design processes, that sort of thing. I write a lot about historical warfare and historical context in my games. So follow me, throw me some cash if you're interested in any of that. And you can find me at Twitter at Bashir Gauss.
All right, Miriam.
Hi, so you can find me on Twitter at media_junkie. I currently am working on Surzamine, which is my South Asian decolonized fantasy setting. There's a Patreon with Patreon early release articles, and then it's later public because I do want the world to be out there. In addition, I am the creator and the GM for the Musafir's podcast, which is currently on hiatus, but is coming back very soon, ending season 1. It is set in the same world. In addition, I am starting my own Twitch channel in July, Utopia. You can find all that information on my Twitter as well, which is about highlighting a lot more BIMPOC people in the industry and playing games and all that good stuff.
Boom. There we go. Two amazing guests. Now I will shout out something for Steve and I. I am holding something in my hands right now, and I am holding a copy of Unbreakable, Volume 1. Steve? Okay, Steve's gonna grab his. But I will say that I just got my hardcover copy of Unbreakable Volume 1, and it is beautiful. So if you are looking for We should. Could somebody like screenshot this or something, Steve? Okay, there we go. Now
I can't screenshot it. Yeah.
that's okay. If you are looking for, good Asian content that has already been published, that is out there, and you want something D&D specific, Steve and I could do this. We'll flex. And you want something D&D specific, check out Unbreakable Volume 1. It is now available at DriveThruRPG. You can order a print copy or a PDF. They're great. In terms of like what we've got going on, Asians Represent is going to, continue doing this stream. You could find all of our content on our YouTube channel afterwards. I'm going to start saving some content on our Twitch page, but I also want to stream more on Twitch. I think what I want to do on Twitch is actually start streaming Asian games. So I want to stream, games that feature Asian protagonists, games that are, an interesting take on Asian cultures. And one of the games that I really want to stream on Twitch, and it's something that I know we're going to be talking about in the future, is Star Wars Battlefront 2. So the reason why I want to stream Star Wars Battlefront 2 on Twitch is because the campaign actually features a female Asian protagonist. One of the very few times you see like a woman in Star Wars, let alone a South Asian woman starring in a Star Wars, a piece of Star Wars media. So I want to do a whole like Twitch chat on Star Wars and Asia. I want to go into things that are more than just D&D, because Asians Represent is not just a D&D podcast. We have our own D&D content. We do have Dungeons and Asians, but Asian representation shouldn't just be limited on our platform to D&D. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, handling other media properties. We're going to be diving into other books. I want to talk about, we actually recorded another episode of the podcast, and we're going to talk about like Lovecraft and Asians as they appear in, books about Cthulhu and that whole mythos. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be streaming a lot more on Twitch. Now, one of the things I do want to shout out is, Steve, if you could throw that link back in the chat, is we have a Discord server. So after this stream is over, I'm actually going to be hopping into our Discord server because I have plans with at least one person in the Discord server to play video games tonight. So hop onto our Discord. I'm going to hop in the chat. I don't mind chatting more. Lately, I've actually, I feel like I've become more Asian, and I'm learning how to play League of Legends. And so I'm going to be doing that on Discord. So the Discord is popping. So come and join us on the Asians Represent Discord. Steve has posted the link. If you're watching this on YouTube, I will put the link in the description down below. Folks, thank you for tuning into this Asians Read Oriental Adventures stream. Please check out Miriam's stuff. Check out Bashir's stuff. Support them both on Patreon. Hop onto our Discord. Let's chill. Let's chat. Let's create amazing stuff. All right. Well, thank you folks for joining us. And I'm going to end the stream now. Bye.
Peace out.
Peace.